Hi, I'm Anthony Chapman and I'm a tutor at Point Blank. In my career I've worked with bands including Franz Ferdinand, Kicks and Klaxons. The following video shows you the type of content you can expect on our Mixing Dance Music in Ableton course. Hope to see you in class soon.
So let's start taking a look at the vocals in this track. Now, while it's not a vocal-led track, there isn't a full lyric. The title of the track is reflected in this vocal hook, and it's on this stereo audio track here. If we take a listen to it in solo, we can hear that it's made up of several layers of vocals, and they've been mixed down into this stereo track. There's some stereo image there, some of the layers are panned left, some panned right, and I'm happy to work with this like this because they're well balanced and I can just treat them as a group of vocals from the off. Now, if we look at the signal chain, you can see the first thing I've got here is this compressor device, but what I'm actually using this to do is to do some de-essing. Now, a de-esser essentially is a compressor that's only designed to be triggered by sibilant frequencies, so things like s and f and t, those kind of sounds. And there isn't a dedicated de-esser device in live, but we can easily use the compressor to do this. I've used the sidechain EQ. You can see I've turned that on and I've set it to the bandpass shape. If I turn on the preview there and we have a listen, so this is what the compressor is actually hearing on the way in. I've focused it in on those sibilant frequencies, and if you look at the actual gain reduction, you'll see on those in shake, then you can see it's compressing really noticeably. So if you take the preview off, so this is really helping even it out a bit. If I turn that off, it's a little bit too much on those sibilant frequencies, so I really think this helps. Then moving along the chain, we've got this EQ here where all I've done is I've rolled off some of those low frequencies just to get rid of any rumble in the mic. And we've got a standard compressor afterwards. This is a pretty normal setting for compressing vocals for me. Ratio about 4:1, attack relatively fast, release a little bit slower, and I've got it set to RMS because I like the way the RMS mode reacts to a sound that varies over time. Then we've got some boosts after the compressor. This is my usual mode. This is, cuts first, boosts second. So I've got a bit of a boost there in the low mids at around 370 hertz there, which is just warming up that low mid a bit. And then I've got a boost up here at just under 3K, which is helping the clarity. Again, you'll notice all my EQs, not really extreme settings at all, just doing a little bit of work there. Then I've got the glue compressor at the end of the chain, just to sort of knit all of those sound together, just give it a slight bit of, a little bit of a sheen, a little bit of a finished sheen. So if I turn that off, this is without it. Then on. It just feels more finished when it's on. After all of those bits of processing, I've got a gate device here. And if you listen to the vocals, there's quite a lot of noise between the lines. There's quite a lot of hiss. Listen. So what I decided to do was to use the gate to gently reduce that. You can see the floor of the gate, I'm only bringing it down to about minus 18 dB. So basically, when the gate is closed, it's going to reduce the level by about 18 dB. Then you'll notice this return value here of 12.2 dB. This stops the gate from unintentionally opening and closing really quickly. The threshold is set to minus 18.5 dB, but the gate won't close until the sound level falls another 12.2 dB below that. And that stops the chattering that sometimes you get when the audio level is hovering around the threshold. So I'll just turn that on. Shake your mind around. Let's bring that threshold down a tiny little bit more. Great. So if you hear it in the mix. So that's really tidying up, but without us losing any of the really important bits of the vocal. The other main part of the vocals in this track are these tracks, the ooh vox. So if we have a listen to this first one here. So you can hear this is like a really nice layered backing vocal, and I've added lots of effects there. I've really like cranked it into the reverb and the delay because I really want to create that sort of atmospheric sound. I really want it to wash over. Now if we have a look at the channel strip for this, if we have a look at the signal chain for this, you can see I've done this EQ at the start. If I bypass that EQ, you can see I've added a lot of sort of high mids, and I've shaved off some really low stuff, and also a little bit right at the top because there was a bit of noise there. And if you listen closely in, listen to this. Can you just hear that? There's some little mobile phone GSM interference at the end. So it doesn't really interfere in the track, it's not really audible, but there's a little lesson to be learned for everybody there about keeping your mobile phones switched off when you're in the studio, because sometimes you end up with that, and more than once I've had to do restoration jobs for people who have got a wonderful lead vocal track, and then right at the most important bit there's that unmistakable GSM interference, and I've been sent vocal tracks where they're hoping that I can work some magic on it to get rid of it. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So really, really, get that phone switched off when you're in the studio, especially if you're recording anything like vocals or other live instruments. So this EQ's just sort of focusing in on the area that I think is going to work really well in the track. Then we've got quite a heavy compressor there because this is a very dynamic track. You can see in the waveform here that the level changes quite a lot. So I've used this compressor to just sort of even everything out a little bit, but if you look at it more closely, you'll also see that after the first half it really gets quite a bit quieter again, and this is a classic thing because obviously you start to run out of breath and it gets a bit softer, and that was a bit of a problem for me because I was finding I was losing it in the mix. So what I did was, yet again, I got the utility plugin, and what I've done is pushed it up. Just as it starts to lose energy, I've started to push it up towards the end, and then I've copied that onto the other instances of this vocal. So if we listen to it again here, and if we watch the utility gain, so what I'm trying to do is compensate for that level drop with gain on the utility. We hear it in the track. I was struggling with this for quite a while. You find this quite often with vocals, that especially sort of non-lyrical vocals like this, you'll really struggle sometimes to keep them in the mix and keep them at a good level. And a little bit of judicious automation of this kind, I think, really can help you in that issue. Then after the compressor, I've got a chorus because I just wanted to spread it out a little bit and just give it a bit of modulation. And after I did all that, I still felt like it was missing something. I didn't feel like it sat right in the mix, and there was just something missing. And then I suddenly thought, I kind of wish it had a higher octave as well. Now, I decided to do something a bit silly, and I was really lucky that it actually happened to work. So you see this track here, Ooh Vox High. So all I did was I duplicated the original track, and then I went into the sample window and I just turned it up by an octave by 12 semitones, and I've set the warp mode to Complex Pro to try and get it to be as smooth as possible. Now, obviously, this is going to make it sound a bit like a chipmunk or something like that, but if you sit it in the mix, it can work. Let's just have a listen to the track on its own. Here it comes. Now, I tried to sort of keep the EQ a little bit more tight on this, to really focus it in on the area where those higher notes come through and give it that harmonic richness, but without drawing too much attention to the fact that it sounds like a chipmunk. So this is one of these things in a mix where you have to do a little bit of cloak and dagger. There's a little bit of sleight of hand going on here. So you see, it's just loud enough to sit in with that other vocal and give that impression of a higher octave. On the group for these ooh vocals, I've used the sidechain EQ again on the glue compressor to get it to react a little bit less heavily to the low frequencies, because I found that some of the low frequencies in the vocal were making it freak out a little bit. So I've just rolled this on the high pass filter off to 200 Hertz. Then, yet again, the good old Lufticus. And I'm using this to do quite a decent boost on the high end, both at 2.5K and at 5K. And then I've got this ping pong delay as well. So I kind of broke my habit of only using send effects. I just felt that getting this in there on the insert was working quite nicely. Just gives it a bit of extra spatial effect. And really it's meant to be a fairly ethereal sounding vocal. So I'm really happy with that. It's working really, really nicely. Essentially, it's supposed to sound a little bit like, almost like an instrument. I just want to talk you through what I've got going on the master. Now, one thing it's really important to point out is, if I switch to the mixer quickly and we take a look at my master fader, let's have a look at the level that I'm kind of running this mix at. So this is one of the loudest points in the track, and we've got about 3.7 dB of headroom. Now, I normally aim for between 3 and 6 dB of headroom on the master. It depends on what kind of music you're working with, it depends on what kind of track it is, but there's no reason at all why even headroom of 10 to 12 dB isn't acceptable. So don't be afraid to turn up your speakers. Turn the monitors up, and that will stop you pushing all the faders right up and then clipping your master. Putting a limiter on it just hides the clip. The clip has still happened, but it's just squaring it off. So you need to get into the habit of mixing on at a good level on the master. So going through the signal path on my master, yet again, the Lufticus comes out. And this, I've switched the Lufticus into mastering mode, and I'm adding quite a big boost at 10K to really give it some sparkle. A little bit of a boost at 2.5K. I'm doing a very small cut at 160 Hertz, and then a little bit of a boost at 40 Hertz. So if I turn this off, it's just a little bit less focused. Turn it on. Yeah, I really like what this has done for the mix, so that's fantastic. Then I've got my glue compressor, and the glue compressor, I've filtered out some of the low frequencies using the sidechain EQ, because obviously there's a big bass drum in this track and it was reacting a bit too heavily to that. So I've filtered out up to about 108 Hertz, and that's really the kind of compression that I would be looking for on the master. If we drop this in at a bit where the track's a little bit more full. So this is the kind of compression that I tend to go for on the master, which is, it's compressing all the time, but not compressing very much. That's the approach that I tend to prefer. You can obviously just catch the peaks, use a higher threshold and a higher ratio, but I prefer to have constant, fairly gentle compression just to glue everything together. Then I've got a limiter at the end, and this is not on. What we're listening to now, this is what I would consider my mix, without the limiter on and with some headroom on the master. But it's completely understandable that you may want to do a mix that you want to take and play out, and you would need it to be quite loud. So I would also do an alternate version mix just for playing out purposes with the limiter on like that. Just tickling the limiter. It's just starting to limit a little bit there, nothing too heavy. And there we have it, that's the mix down that I've done. Make sure you go and check out the mix in full on SoundCloud. The link will be in the description for the video. And also make sure you check out the Mixing Dance Music Ableton Live 8-week course.